Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Product and Cake. Today in the virtual studio is with me, Paul, and our amazing guest is here. Paul, how you doing? And can you please introduce our guest?
Yeah, thank you for introducing us and welcoming us, Gonche. It's nice to have you, and it's also fantastic to have our very, very first guest here at Product and Cake, and that is Jori, the creative director of an.jetzt. Is it how you would pronounce it in English, the company name?
The company name is actually an, so it's German for switching something on. So yes, an.jetzt is the right answer. And Thank you so much for having me. Hi Paul, hi Gonche.
Welcome to the show. Super nice to have you. We already checked that your favorite cake is cheesecake. That
Very
is
important.
Very important, but it would not be a product and cake episode if we don't start with a check-in question.
Yay!
Yeah.
And the question today is, what's a game that you'd like win if you played against everyone on this call?
Cool. So after we had like some nice cheesecake, I would love to go bowling with you guys, and definitely would like to win.
Do you think you will win bowling?
I'm not sure. I haven't played for a long time, but that's actually when you just asked about a game, that came to my mind, because bowling is something we can do together, and I think this is also
that's sweet.
What we love to do. So
that is really sweet. I was thinking very evilish and was thinking of a competitive game that I for sure can win and the rest cannot win, because I thought that the goal of the question is a little bit more malicious, but apparently not. Yeah, I like to play bowling. Yeah, let's go.
Let's make it for real.
After the recording, What was your choice, Gonche? What is your game you likely win us?
Now, because we are going to play together and with that kind of mindset, I would say Dungeons and Dragons, because we are all playing together for the same goal, and it is super fun, and I love Dungeons and Dragons. So yes.
I'm still in the competition mode. Sorry, not so fast in switching, and I would definitely choose squash. I played squash a few times, and I think if you just did it a few times and someone else not, you have already great chances to survive and win.
Okay. I see that.
Okay, so now we are arrived to the meeting, and I'm super happy to talk with you, Jori, today about your agency, the company where you are the creative director. And on the website, it states an is a design-driven tech studio with a feel-good philosophy. That sounds fantastic. And for full transparency, we should announce right away that we had already some projects together in various forms. And also your agency is basically responsible for the awesome new product and cake branding.
Yeah,
so
I already got so many great feedback on our new branding. And people also mentioned that it is much easier to detect our podcast when they're scrolling in their app. So I'm really happy. And it is very interesting for me how you and your team got to the point and went through this amazing processes. And I'm also really interested to learn a little bit more about that today.
Great, let's do that. So first of all, also thanks to my partner in crime for this project, Cornelia. We both did the podcast cover together for you guys, and I think you also had the chance to kind of feel how we work, and it's the good feel philosophy is for us super important because it works inside and outside. It's first of all kind of when we work with clients, we always kind of try to break the ice really fast. So we invite them in, we have a certain process of working, which I would love to go a little bit deeper later on in the podcast. And after we kind of broke the ice, it's also internally, we do the same thing. Like the feel-good philosophy works also inside the company. Like we are kind of more like friends, and also like how I entered the podcast today is like more talking to friends than this being too serious, because I mean, we done like professional work together on different projects. So your internal project for the product and cake, but also on your professional level, we worked also together. And I think that's a great part when everything comes together. And yeah, that's our design-driven tech studio with a feel-good philosophy. Again, is kind of design and technology. That's the super interesting spot for us, and also that's what inspires me, because design is on the one hand really open, and you kind of have always opinion, and tech is something super which should always be super solid and has the contrast to it. And mixing both together, I think that's the exciting part.
Yeah, I can't agree more to that. Maybe just a side note that also on tech you have a lot of opinions and you need to negotiate around, but true. That's maybe for the tech podcast. I was super impressed also by your work when we talked about the podcast branding, and I'm very curious on how you get into branding. When did you realize that branding is a thing for you?
That's cool. Yeah, actually it was interesting because I actually grown up in a small suburb in the middle of Germany, and I didn't even know there's like design is really a topic. But I early developed as a kid, I always loved to take out like tapes. Yes, I'm quite old. And when you bought like new tapes, which were empty, you had always kind of this little stickers inside with the logo of the brand. You could write like little numbers on it. And this would always stick on my toy cars. And that's where I kind of realized, I love like kind of graphic design and branding. And later on in school, I was like drawing really like deep into letter forms. And that's where like one art teacher told me like, you should be a graphic designer. And it's like, later on, I realized, okay, there's something like a design career possible. And that's where I actually studied my bachelor in the UK, and also later on, after visiting in Berlin, working for a little bit, I went deeper into brand and identity, and I did my master in London, and since then I'm in the game. Yeah.
That is really interesting, and I really love the idea that it is within you from the very early childhood that you started to redesign your toy cars. That is super cute. Yeah. And I also completely agree with this feel-good philosophy that you mentioned throughout the process that Paul and I went through with you. We really felt that it is our feedback is welcomed. You not only are taking care of the brand that you want to create for the podcast, but also you are taking care of us in a way that we are being heard. We are comfortable with what we see, and our thoughts is taken into consideration. So I think it is also really important in an environment that usually, I also studied industrial design, so I've been in the designer communities for a little while, and it was not also always coming with feel-good philosophy. It was a little bit harsher, a little bit more judgmental, which with working with some other agencies in the past, especially the very design-driven agencies, I felt that they cared more about the design and the outcome to look perfect and not sometimes fitting what people who have requested it might fit them. So how do you work with the clients? How do you make sure that you get all the input from them? And also one important, very important question for me is that when do you think clients should approach you? When is the time for clients to think about brand? So if you have a startup, when is the time that you need to think about it? Is it the time that you are about to buy the domain, or where does it come from?
Yeah, cool. Let's start. When do you need a brand? I think that's super important. So I think like there's different ways of branding. Like there's personal branding, there's brands for companies and so on. So the first question should be, do you have already a brand? And then if not, you basically should never have not a brand. So you always need a brand, I think. For whatever you do, you need to communicate something. So that's why it's super important to have something what you have. So an existing brand, for example, if you have an existing brand, when would be the time? I think the most important time is when you have the motivation to change something. I think it's super important not to just to do like, oh, I need to do branding because kind of I feel like others are doing it. It should be really your own driver. Like you should feel like, oh, and there's certain changes, and I really want to go the next step. Then I think it's a really good time to challenge yourself, because I think that's where the most important part comes, and also how we work. We first of all listen a lot, and listening is something what is really underrated often, because people say like they often want to talk their own thing, they want to do their own process, and as you described before, Gonce, some agencies maybe also just doing projects just to win awards, to do their own thing. But what we would love to do and always try is listening, understanding the kind of the product, the need, what you really want to solve as a brand. And that's where it really starts getting super exciting, because for me, like when I'm listening, I already like write down many notes to really understand what they really want to do and what they want to change and what the product is about. And it is another super important part is, where's the brand leading to the future? Like if you want to change something, if you do a transition or a transformation, where do you where's your way towards like what's the bigger goal? And that's where we come in, and we have like our own kind of brand development process where we start. First of all, it's strategic based, and that's where we kind of entered as well when we done the Product and Cake podcast cover. We did a light version because it's, I mean, on if you have a brand which is like on multi different channels, then you need to look in much more touch points, and you have one touch point which is at the moment the podcast cover, so that's super important. But what we usually do is like we do a kick-off workshop. That's where when we listen to all the problems and all the kind of needs, then we do a kind of a quick competitor audit where we look at the competitors in the field, collect everything, and then we have some really fast kind of methods to find out the answers. So one is super exciting where we collaborate with the clients. So for example, we do brand personality slider where we really find out what do you feel like, how do you align even with the stakeholders, how many people are we involving, so to come really fast decisions, and what we get out of the strategic phases like brand principles, and also how kind of the brand will look like. So we create mood boards, so you can easily have a decision, and also you get your taste, but also always with the right answer, how it's the strategic foundation of your brand. So that's a kind of first phase, and then we move on to brand design, and we usually deliver 1 to 3 route where we kind of give you directions, and often it is like kind of, if you're an existing brand, we start kind of, this is your little evolution to. We go a little bit more crazy and try to find out how disruptive is your brand and how disruptive you want to be. So we have always kind of a more future outlooking route as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, already the light process was super inspiring and very interesting, especially if you can talk about your heart project like you're having a podcast, right? That was, of course, a very nice process for us. But I wonder if I would run my own company and I have a handful of people and maybe also a designer, and we have some kind of more or less successful product. And now it's maybe our anniversary, or we have a big new cooperation we want to start, something that I feel what you just mentioned, okay, there is a need for change. And I will talk to my team, and my designer may say, no worries, I can do a brand on the side. I just finish our letter paper here and the website, and then having a new logo, and then off we go. No need for this kind of agency. What would be your answer to me?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, if you do it in-house, you don't have most importantly, you don't have the outside look on yourself. And then, I mean, often people say, what is really branding? It's like when you leave the room and people talk about that. and then you're always inside the room. You only listen to your own gossips, so it doesn't really work. I think that's the most important part. You need to be the external player. First of all, in a way, it is cheaper because you save internal resources and you actually have professionals working on it. It may be an investment at the beginning, but I mean, your brand is kind of so crucial. You need to actually invest into it to make it right, because also when you have a digital product, you have so many touch points, you want to roll it out, get it right first, and then it's so much easier to iterate also new kind of ways, because the brand looks all right. It is up to the competition. I mean, also like we've spent over 7 hours, up to 8 hours on a screen. If you don't get this right, people have so many different other digital products they use every day. If the design is not right and the brand is not right, you're easily out of it. Like this, I think that's the competition you have to face, and it's not like you can hide something like back in the days. You just did it a little bit. No, you need to be 100%.
Especially nowadays, where more and more things appear from all kind of sources. It's super crucial, and I can only compare it to the tech world, where it is happening that often that a company needs or a startup needs a new website, and one of the engineers steps in and say, no problem, I can set up a WordPress, it will just take 5 minutes, and then we have it. We don't need to pay any content management system out there or website builder. And for me, the most important thing is to say, okay, what brings value? What is it? Why your team is there? And I think your team basically is there for creating the brand, right? And ideally, the company will work with that brand and create their value on top. Mm-hmm. But I'm convinced now. But still, wouldn't it become super, super expensive? How much do I need to pay when I call you?
First of all, you need to pay with time. Just call us up, and actually we have different models. So of course it always depends on how many stakeholders you have, how big is your company, because that's the value of time comes in. Also for us, like if you have a bigger company, it needs much more rounds often, because you need to have the feedback is also a bit slower. Like for startups, we can be really fast, and you don't need to put in so much money, because we have a kind of a really simple way how we set up a branding process to be fast, to be flexible. And also that comes down to the point, how do you keep a brand also up to date? And I think that's the biggest part. Today we don't build brands how we used to. It's like more we're building dynamic brands. So there's certain fixed points you have on a brand. So you wouldn't change all the time the logo, but you would also keep a consistent typeface. But other elements, they can be up to date, they can be currently changing. And I think this is also where it comes down, get someone professionally on this, because then we really understand the core elements which needs to be fixed and the elements which can be more flexible. And we can also do check-ins from time to time, because that's also kind of important. It's like, when you have a brand, it's not like you do it once and then you leave it there for 10 years. You constantly need to work on it. But I think you need to have the fixed elements. They need to be like solid. They need to work. And sometimes they also need to be a little bit more timeless, because then you also have a longer life for that.
Nice. So, that is very...
Be sustainable with your design and your resources as well. So
yeah, that is very interesting, especially in comparison to what Paul mentioned in the tech world, that with our tech, we also need to be consistently making sure that they are up to date, they are still delivering the value that we need, and they are still meeting the needs of our customers. So it is very interesting that with brands, we also need to keep them constantly up to date. And also it gives me a little bit more reassurance of why all of these brands around us are constantly changing their logo, and there is another big bang of rebranding for another big brand. And in connection to that, I wanted to also ask you, what are some big brands or smaller maybe that inspire you? Is there anything that you check out and look at to get inspired and stay up to date?
I think for me, it is a constant look into the brand sphere. That's what I do automatically, but usually I also try to be completely off this as well. So even for me, being completely offline, looking even in nature for inspiration, that helps me a lot as well, because I need the balance. I need actually the opposite of the digital influence, because often you just repeat then the things you have seen. And that's kind of natural. Like what you see all the time, you kind of repeat in your design as well. So that's why I also find it really challenging, because with digital design, there's a lot of flexibility and freedom, but at the same time, there's a lot of restraints. Like how often do you see like a login screen for an app which looks similar? Like they're all the same, because it's a user pattern you're following. It kind of it's just how you do it, and that's what people are used to, and that kind of why it's super repetitive. I think with branding, that's what I least try. I look like always into the brief, what they need, and then I find like a strategic answer to it. So I usually don't try to follow any other big brands and say like, oh, this is like super important, or this is what I want to do in my next project. More, what is the question and what's the challenge, and then I start my research, and I have the white paper where I'm like filled with all the inspiration and all the ideas, and then especially with the team, and 50% designers and 50% developers. That's where I find the interesting answers, and of course together with the client as a partner, that's where I get my inspiration.
Fantastic. And you said you are 50% designers and 50% engineers. That means if you came up with a fantastic new brand design and that contains a new website or a new login screen, it's not on me to develop it, but you can also offer the implementation of your new brand.
Yes, exactly. And also how we do the branding is, of course, we look at always have the view as a developer as well, because, or a tech engineer, as you say, maybe not better. So yeah, I think it's super important to have a design system which works on a digital space, and that's why our engineers have a big opinion on this as well, and that's why we collaborate together, and that's why how actually digital branding works. It needs to have both involved designers and developers.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and I think the real value also comes from the combination. I can remember some projects already years ago when we get the briefing from a designer and they said, okay, it should be 2 centimeters from the left, and then letter size A4, and we answered, wait, it's a screen, and that's something you don't want to see nowadays.
It won't happen here.
Awesome. Maybe, so I have 2 questions, but I don't know which one to answer. One is obviously the AI question that has to take place in every podcast. And the other one is, do you see any or what would be a red flag for you in the first conversations with a potential new client?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Like, you mean, have they rejected a client? They said,
if we have rejected clients, we have a strong no policy.
If they came up with AI, then go out.
Actually, I mean, there's always certain red flags. First of all, we have when it kind of comes to the fields where you're operating in, we have a positive future. And a positive future means, like, if you're a change maker, you also have something good to do on our planet, but not also on our planet, more like in our fields. And we have like different fields. First of all, sustainability, decentralization, future living, the knowledge culture, corporate culture, and mobility and smart cities. So these are the fields which we find really interesting. And we also have not a feeling that it's like future fields. They're actually so important that we have a big sense that it will be keeping us busy also for more than a few years, because they're huge, and we also have clients in these fields, and we have the expertise in these fields, and that's what we also want to go deeper and deeper, because that's what drives us. Yeah. Sorry, I kind of forgot the question.
The question was about red flags.
Yeah, the red flags. Yeah, thanks.
Dedicated on fields is definitely a good.
I think that, and that's kind of our kind of doorkeeper in a way, but also red flags. I think if you, what sometimes we feel like with it is important that you have to kind of drive into a project, and sometimes we have potential clients who ask us for a project, and then it takes them a long time to reply, which is okay. Sometimes people can be busy, but when you feel like, oh, it's taking 2-3 months, and you have like another conversation and it keeps building up with time, and we sometimes don't feel the energy, because we want to do things in a fast pace. I think we are not like, we're always running in a way, in a positive speed. So we want to do projects not for 2 years or 3 years. We really have the eager to do like when you do constant, like if you have a focus time, that's you do things in a time period which is not 2 or 3 years. You can't have a focus time of 3 years. So for us, it's like a sweet spot of 3 to 6 months. That's, I think, is usually for bigger projects, and even a brand project we can do up into like a month. We are able to do startup branding, and that's high paced.
Cool. That sounds fantastic, and I think feel good philosophy is never a one-way street, right? I can't come to you and say, okay, now make me happy.
Yeah.
No, it needs to match the energy, and you need to bring some, and you get some, and then you have awesome results.
That's true.
And I have one last question before we close for today. Is there any recommendation? This recommendation can be a book, can be another podcast, but maybe just mention product and cake again there, because that's your favorite podcast, and we know it. And or it can be a movie, a series, or something that you would like to recommend.
Actually, I have a book on my table I brought today.
Oh, nice.
And it's called Design and Strategy, because I love actually strategy so much. And the Design Strategy book is actually by a Norwegian author. Now I forgot her name. 1 second. Sorry, maybe need to cut this. No, don't think.
It is a real life. We forget the names of the books or the authors.
Yeah, but in a way, it's kind of like a glossary of different design and strategy.
Is it by Wanda Grimsgaard?
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
That would be my recommendation if you like, if you love design and strategy.
Amazing.
It's a cool book with like all different methods, and sometimes I think that's the interesting thing with design methods or strategy things. We have our own kind of framework where we decide if these are the ones, but some clients come to us and they're like, oh, I want to work with this framework. And usually we are flexible to work in any kind of strategic framework. So it's always interesting to find out new methods and to try them out.
Awesome.
Great. Thank you.
Gonja, what is your recommendation today?
Ooh, it is hard for me to recommend anything today. I had a day full of back-to-back meetings from 8:30 in the morning.
Nice.
So my
brain
is
recording.
yeah. So my brain is a little bit fried today, as you can see. Also, cannot talk correctly anymore. I will bring a recommendation next time, but I do recommend this podcast I heard about called Product and Cake.
Yeah. I will recommend this as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to also throw in one recommendation as
Amazing.
a book. Maybe I recommended it already, but it's Humankind von Rutger Bregman. He's talking about the survivor bias. That is also very interesting for choosing design strategies or tech strategies, because you always get the story from the ones that win, right? You barely hear the stories of the failed attempts or on the other side of the game. So being aware of that, and Rutger Bregman takes a look into the whole human history and how it developed, it's super, super inspiring. I love it.
So he collects things where people failed, basically.
No, he puts again the story that forms our view on the society and explains that the reality is totally different. But for example, Columbus, who discovered America, tells a story of the origin people living there, but the story is totally different from the reality. And all of these stories formed our view on society. And I think nowadays it is super important to remember that humans in general are super, super friendly, cooperative, and stick together. And that will secure our survival on this planet. to just end a little bit bigger. Why not?
Positive future. I love it.
I now have also a recommendation now that we talked so much about design, and I'm bringing this book back from my university closet. So it is The Emotional Design by Don Norman. And it is basically why we love or hate some everyday things, why some of the items that we see makes us feel something, and why we keep on using the same mug, for example, and all of these teeny tiny things that we should pay attention a little bit more to. And one thing I really, really love about this book is the front page has the photo of one of my favorite items as a industrial designer. It is the juicer that Philip Stark has designed. So I really love that book.
Such a design classic. Nice.
Yeah.
Looks like a mixture from a rocket or a crazy animal with a head.
That's really cool.
Awesome. Then let us put the books into the show notes, some more books for the read later list. And Jori, it was fantastic to have you. So great to talk with you about branding and design and the work with an agency. And I'm looking forward for our next episode.
Yeah, same here. And Jori, how can people reach out to you if they have a branding topic or have a question for you?
Yeah, if you want to reach out, my email is Jori at an.jetzt.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.